Welcome, everyone. This is taraleelive, and we are live on YouTube. And we have an amazing guest panel here tonight, you guys. Let me tell you about this. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We have been taken over by the Aussies again tonight. And I'm sorry if I'm screaming in your ears because I am so excited. We have another awesome Aussie guy joining us tonight. And I am going to have High Live for today. She is an awesome gal that is also going to be joining us on our guest panel as a regular for now on. So y'all know that she's going to be here hanging with us. And I think JR Token is normally here with us. I think he is off tonight. I don't know. Haven't seen him yet. So he might be popping in here. But we have Dan the man, and Dan is going to introduce our guest from Australia. So here we go, guys. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, guys. Just want to introduce my Aussie compadre, Tory, from the Herbalized Podcast. Tory, take it away, man.
What's going on, guys? My name's Tory, or you might hear me call Herbalized for the duration of this chat that we're having. Dan hollered at me, asked me to come by. I run a pro cannabis podcast here in Australia. Been doing it for a couple of years now. I manage Australia's oldest head shop as well here in Melbourne City. So, you know, cannabis is my life. I spend a lot of time traveling around the fine US of A, doing some work over there in California. And I'm here to have a chat, see what's going on.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have you here tonight. I love the mammoth hat you're representing there. You know,
right.
that is a cool hat too. I love the silver on that one. That is a cool
It is. I actually shout out to Colin from Mammoth because he dropped that hat on me. He's a good dude. You know, Australia, we're on the other side of the world, Taralee, but the cannabis scene's blowing up here as big as anywhere else. You know, unfortunately, not from a rec side of things. The reality is it's a big pharmaceutical thing that's happening here currently. But look, we'll talk about what just happened in Canberra recently, which is the Australian Capital Territory. It actually passed legislation this week for legalisation of cannabis at a very fundamental and basic level, but it's a start for rec users in this country. But as I was saying, you know, pharmaceutical cannabis or medical cannabis is a thing here for the last couple of years now. And, you know, we have some pretty large scale events where we have people from all over the world coming down for symposiums, for talks. And, you know, there's a lot of money in it here at the moment for the big people.
Yeah.
We lost our guest for a minute there, I think. We lost our guest. Did we lose him?
No.
There we go.
No.
He's back.
Yeah. I think that was just a pause. Was that just a pause?
It was a quite poignant pause.
It was a pregnant pause.
And let's give birth to that pause.
Well, you know what? It's 7:10 somewhere. We missed it where I have got to take a dip because, you know, we didn't go live right at 4 o'clock because, you guys, I lost power and my email was out and now I've got to take a nap.
That's a first world problem.
Yeah.
Let's blaze one for the
Let's blaze
nation.
Up. And let's welcome everybody in chat.
Australia's capital, Canberra, is set to legalise recreational use.
Let's blaze one up for Canberra, Australia.
The first, hopefully, of many states to, I don't know, sort of accept weed.
Yeah, I mean, Australia's twisted. I don't know how much you guys have gone over this previously or what you guys know about it, but, you know, medicinal cannabis came through like 2.5, 3 years ago now. And yeah, it just immediately, like when we say medicinal cannabis, you guys have an immediate image that is just wrong. It's nothing like anything you've seen in the States or in Canada. I think just now patients are starting to get access to some flower, but for the most part, it's like laboratory derived synthetic cannabinoids. So tablets, and it's not coming from whole plant. It's legit being synthesized. Although I think that has changed and is changing. There's something like 20 odd legit grow operations around the country now that are producing medicinal pharmaceutical cannabis. But in the current market, it all seems to be just sort of being stored and nothing's being done with it. It's getting easier for patients to find access. But that being said, you on the ground in Australia with access to actual flowers, I reckon you could probably say less than 50 people.
I think that, I'm an advocate rather than an activist for cannabis, and I advocate self-knowledge and teach a man to fish and he'll,
Yep.
that sort of concept. And although I think it's important that people like the safety of the doctors, if there's one thing that most of us, if not all of us, can say about doctors' recommendations for how we deal with pain in our Western society, it's pretty fucking distrusting and disgusting. And they've chosen in my opinion, the wrong substances, and they enforce you and tell you to take it. What's weird is people want to have that same safety net with cannabis and medicinal cannabis. They think that it's super dangerous and they need the doctor to tell them that is that medical weed? Fuck me. It's all medical. It's all medical. Every single strain of cannabis can be medicinal, and every single strain of cannabis can be recreational.
Well, that brings up a really good point with all of our viewers. And tonight we were talking earlier, how many people out there really believe that cannabis is made for medicinal uses? Like, even if they're recreational believers, everybody I think out there believes that it's for medicinal purposes. I would have to say. Well, don't you guys here on the panel? Don't you guys agree? Yeah. I just 100% believe that. And everybody in chat seems to say, hey, your boy, how you doing? Blazing, thanks for coming by tonight. Watching read reviews. What's up, everybody? Lost Art, how are you? White Feather Grow. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us tonight. If you have not heard, this is our friend Herbalized. He is coming in from Australia. He's actually been out in NorCal, guys, so he knows our area and what we're coming up against and what we're doing. And so I really like to hear that a little bit more about the Australia growing and, what is there big things that you see that are huge differences, or what do you want to talk about?
Well, look, for the last 10 or 15 years in Australia, the cannabis that's been produced bulk, and look, it's a black market. So the bulk of it's been produced by, people that are just in it for money. There's been no love. So a rampant use of PGRs has been a standard throughout most Australian cannabis for a long time. I would say the last 3 years, but probably even the last 5 or 6 years, thanks largely to places like America and California, awareness has changed. Me and Dan were saying earlier before, it's been a seller's market forever, and it's now becoming a buyer's market, and the awareness is out there. And I think there's a lot more people doing their own thing at home. The idea of teaching a man to fish, there are a lot of guys that are just taking it out of the black market's hands and bringing it into their own bedrooms, with little setups and doing their own little thing. And there's some phenomenal cannabis grown in this country. I've been lucky enough to participate in a few underground cannabis cups here as either a judge for edibles, concentrates, and for flowers as well. And, I've smoked amazing cannabis all across the world, and Australia's top grade cannabis holds up for sure. I'm wearing the mammoth hat. If you want to grow quality weed, wherever you are in the world, you use quality products. Yeah. So, if you look in most growers' shelves, you might peek over the back there. There's some quality products here available all around the country. And there's some great stuff made by Australians as well.
Awesome. Very cool.
I got put onto Tory, the Herbalized podcast. I got put onto Tory from a guy I met when I was filming at the Hemp Expo, Scotty, who runs Dr. Green Thumbs.
Big up to Scotty. He's a legend.
Yeah, man. He's like our Aussie who's really pushing for regenerative, naturally grown. I mean, he wants to step away from a lot of the bottles and away from a lot of the synthetic methods of production. And yeah, that's how me and Herbalized met. And that to me is important on a worldwide level, not just as an Australian. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to mention it, is that just because we're in the middle of fucking nowhere completely on our own doesn't mean there's not dudes really pushing it to the limit, doing the right thing on a worldwide level. Yeah. What do you say to that?
Yeah, man, 100%. From quality grown cannabis to like exceptionally well produced concentrates, you know, it's on par with anywhere. It's just not as prolific and as available. But I mean, look, getting caught with hash in this country is like getting caught with heroin still, you know, like you're in trouble. But the times are changing, and that's a good sign of things. I think, you know, the idea of what's happened in Canberra, and so Canberra is our Washington, if you like. Okay, it's a small territory inside a state. It's our capital territory. It's where Parliament House is. So population-wise, it's very small. But they just recently passed legislation which allows for 50 grams of dried material per household. 2 plants, not allowed to be cultivated indoors. There's words to hydroponics and not being allowed, so I guess they're kind of targeting soil as being a medium. But I mean, anybody who hears that math straight away will be like, well, how can you have 2 plants and only produce 50 grams of dried material? Right, so already there's conflicting things going on. And then Canberra itself is swarming with federal police. So federal police aren't beholden to new state legislation, right? You're breaking a federal law, just like in the States, right? You're breaking a federal law. So, you know, this is an exploratory time for legislation for cannabis in Australia. I think they're trialing it for 3 years. And I think we'll see it move around the country from there. New South Wales will probably happen next. And then, you know, maybe by the time we get to Victoria, where I live, the state that I live, it'll be a little bit more comprehensive in terms of how much material, maybe a few more plants, and maybe the idea of indoor cultivation will get onto the table as well. But look, Australia is... you know, we're tucked away, like Dan said, but, you know, there's, you know, people like Neville Shoemaker. He's an Aussie, man. He's a cannabis legend, you know. So we've had genetics in this country for a long, long time.
Do you think that it will be
so can we, you say legend, okay, and I say I'm new.
Yeah.
Literally high, I know, has no idea who you just named Neville. Now, I know a little bit because I've done my research on seeds and I love Hazes. So that's why I know. So please explain a little bit of Neville and where he comes from. If you could do that, and being an Australian, that would be really cool.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, and I've probably pronounced his surname wrong, but Neville Shoemaker, he was an Aussie guy to Dutch parents. And yeah, like he engineered Hazes. So you know, you've got him to thank for all those delicious strains that you like ultimately. And look, in a nutshell, he was being watched here, he was cultivating here, and he got into trouble. He managed to escape authorities and get over to Holland, where he kind of lived out his life, producing amazing cannabis strains and stuff like that. There's legends of him having popped back up in Australia historically through times, but he passed away earlier this year, sadly. But yeah, he was a massive contributor to cannabis genetics worldwide.
Thank you for mentioning that. And that's what's so cool about this, because it's bringing us together right now. Haze is like one of my favorite. I'm smoking on Super Lemon Haze tonight. And so it's so cool, like connecting, because here I am in Washington State and we're connecting clear across the world right now. And Haze is bringing us together. So cheers to you, Neville, out there, man. I love the Haze.
Yep. That's right.
Cheers, everyone, tonight. Thanks for tuning in to chat, guys. If you have any questions, please direct them to Dan or I. And go ahead, Dan.
So if he's the Haze dude, does that mean that he also influenced Jimi Hendrix?
I have no idea. I feel Hendrix is prior to him. That was an acid reference. I think the Purple Haze was an acid they were dropping back then. I'm not sure about
acid?
that. I feel that's back in the 60s. I feel like Purple Haze. I feel like that's an acid reference, but I don't know, dude. That ain't my wheelhouse. High is nodding her head like she feels like that might be right.
It's acid, High. You think it's acid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was muted and I couldn't work my mouse with my left hand. Yes. Purple Haze. It had nothing to do with weed at all. It had to do with more LSD style stuff. I'm a child of that era. So
glad you said something. I would have had no clue. Thanks for schooling me tonight,
Yeah. I've done my share of acid in my day. Back when I was young and foolish.
That's the time to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, speaking of other stuff, like something I would like to touch on, and we have some people in our chat that have really been touched by some of the conversations we've been having about opioids and the crisis that people are dealing with in different countries and getting off those and how to use cannabis. And I, if you would like to touch on any of that or anything that you feel like is going on in your country, because I really don't feel like it's just your country and our country specific. I think it's worldwide.
It is a worldwide issue. And I think we're starting to see in places around the world where cannabis legalization is coming in or recreational use is coming in, is a decline in those problems, but there's still big problems. And here in Australia, I mean, ice and heroin are the two kind of epidemic drugs, right? And I think ice is basically what you guys call meth, right? And yeah, I mean, cannabis is so helpful, and the potential for its use, and even going beyond that and going into just plant-based therapies, right? It doesn't have to be cannabis. Things like ayahuasca, ibogaine, they're DMT-rich plants, psilocybin-rich plants are being explored now much to a greater degree than they ever have been before.
I love that you're talking all medicines. So please continue, because I have just started microdosing myself. Yeah. And I really am thinking it's helping. But yeah, so what else? Yeah.
With psilocybin?
Yes. I just started with Golden Teachers. Yeah. Because that's what I was able to have access to.
Yeah, the idea of microdosing is becoming huge now, it's and way more acceptable. But the results that people are having in parts of the world for curing heroin addiction, specifically alcohol addiction as well, with things like ibogaine, with things like ayahuasca ceremonies, it can't be denied, right? And now there's like research going into ecstasy, MDMA, right? So it's really starting, and cannabis was a big part of creating this shift. The taboos were so firmly set in place, and once the more conservative people were able to see that, the sky didn't fall, the ground didn't open up, life just pretty much went on as normal in all these parts of the world where cannabis has become friendly. So that's kind of opened the door to people going, well, let's take the next step. Yeah. And ultimately it's all going to be super beneficial. Australia, like I said, has a terrible epidemic with ice users and things like that, but there's no real it's kind of swept under the rug, don't you think, Dan? Really, there's no real approach being taken.
I think because we don't see that there's a junkie in all of us, I think we look at drug addicts real differently. And it's like, man, unless you're real hardcore with your food, you still are addicted. Unless you're good with your gambling, you're still addicted. Unless you're good with what you watch and you're not just watching entertainment, but you're watching some education as well, you're still addicted.
Yeah.
So just because like, you know, I've got great, real close friends that I love that just eat horribly and they eat all the nasty foods, and it's no different. They're going to die just in the same negative way from the same horrible diseases. What I like about cannabis is the variety of it is so vast that I've had problems decades ago on substances. I've actually had, when I was a kid, I found it very difficult to stop using crystal meth. And I mean, cannabis helped in it. I was just like, look, I'll just smoke weed. I committed. I was like, yeah, I'm going to smoke weed. That's going to be my thing. I don't need that other shit. Because we have to admit to ourselves that, unfortunately, we all have something. We just have something, and that's okay. But cannabis is relatively healthy in every way. And the fact that there's such a variety of it is like, you say to the drug addict, look, if you could have a different fucking strain of pot that was super powerful every single time, every single day, you know, would that get you off meth? Most of them would say yes. I don't know. I would. I did. I've spoken to other friends that have been addicted to meth. One that's still addicted to meth, and yes, if he had access, he said, I mean, you know, take a word of a drug addict as far as you want. But I asked him, hey man, if you had like 20 different strains that you could smoke that you grew yourself and you just had unlimited amounts, would that get you off meth? He's like, yep, absolutely.
Well, I think the other side of this, like, is, you know, where in a black market, you know, cannabis users are exposed to other drugs. You know, like the plug you go to, oh, what's that? That's some of that fresh, oh, look at that stretch. It's got the gooey.
That's probably her super lemon haze that she's showing you, right?
Looks all right.
No, actually, hi. This is actually wreckage. This is wreckage that I grew last year. I'm not crazy about the smell, but it, you know, it's nice. It's got a lot.
Shut up. You've got it. Just
got goo, but I can't complain.
It
And
looks
it's
edible.
Yeah.
It does,
I just think I could eat it and no one would know.
Should I just scoop it in there?
Oh, I reckon you know about it, Dan.
All right. Go ahead. Sorry. I had to show you what I was smoking on. Cheers, everybody. Puffing away.
Get on it. But I do think that's an important thing, that the black market, it's an inherent side effect of it, that, you know, like as a young kid in Australia, when I wanted to score pot, the guy I scored pot off, he sold everything else as well, you know? So in a legal market, in a well-informed market, in a market where it's not taboo to talk about it with your kids, you don't expose them to those kind of dangers. You know, at 15, 16 years old, you know, the opportunity to do much harder drugs arrived. And in most instances, I was like, hell yeah, I'll take that, because I was a stupid 15 or 16-year-old kid and I didn't know what I was doing. And fortunately, like, it didn't get the worst of me at any point, and I managed to keep my shit together. But, you know, I don't want to think of a world where, you know, my kids might have to do that. I'd like to think they could go to a nice, clean, safe environment, know that the medicine there is nice and safe, and be able to consume it without any thought of persecution, as long as they're over 18.
Yeah, man. Look,
Yeah.
I think that normalizing this plant is a big part of it. It's
Well,
not.
You know, we've only been legal here in Canada for a year, and when it first went legal, my province where I live, we weren't allowed to grow. They didn't allow certain things. But it's been a year now, and they've just changed their mind, and now we are allowed to grow. So I think that once you open the door a little bit, it's going to start, over. You can't deny it at this point. I mean, it's not, when a major country like Canada goes legal, the whole country, come on, and now and then US has got more and more states coming on board. Eventually the word's going to get out to all the way down under.
You know what? Hi, 100%. And I want to bring something else. Another thing that's really super important that Haze joins us on these panels is Haze really is the number one consumer that is going in today's dispensaries in the United States. In Washington State, I know for a fact, it's 61-year-old women. And they're not going in just for them. They're going in there for their husbands because their husbands are aching and they're too embarrassed to go in and complain about it or whatever. And they're going in there. The women are the ones that go out and do majority of the shopping. Y'all know if they're the older ones, they do. And so those are the ones that really need to be here and need to be on YouTube and need to be more exposed to this. And it's important that you guys actually share this with your moms, with your grandmas. And it's important that we have this also around kids. It was so cool earlier with Herbalized. We were hanging out and he was here and we got to see his little guy. And like, it's so important that families are exposed to this on a whole.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's really important. And it's, I have a never-ending battle with my mum, who's probably of a similar generation to High. And she just, cannabis it's the devil's weed, and to convince her otherwise, I don't know what it's going to take. It's possibly not even doable. So it caused never-ending conflict between us. And it's conflict that's really unnecessary because on one side, she's a proud mother of all the things I've achieved and done and traveled and da. But then she has this side of her that just can't get over the fact that I consume cannabis as well. In her mind, I'm a junkie. If I can't go a day without it, then it's ruling me. I'm not ruling it. So it's so important to have people like High in this conversation and to break down the taboo and not just see people like me and Dan as the face of cannabis, So props to you.
What the fuck is wrong with that? The fuck is wrong with that? What if that was it? What if it was just you and me and we were the face?
That's all I had. We're handsome faces though, Dan, remember?
You have very handsome faces, so I wouldn't worry about it. I say this, and you're the same age as my children. Just take that in, just me appreciating a handsome face. Getting back on the subject, it was my son who actually got me to medicate because I hadn't used cannabis since I was a teenager, really. The odd occasion I would, ask my son for a couple of joints when I would go out and meet with some friends, but on a regular basis, it wasn't until I was having all sorts of pain issues because of my cancer treatment. And he said, why don't you try this? And we did, and I haven't looked back. And I haven't taken any anti-inflammatories in I don't know how long, and I used to live on them.
Yeah, and that's a story that you hear again and again and again and again, right? And and I mean, having the environment that supports that from your doctor on up is really important. And we're just starting to get that here in Australia. I mean, I had again, to bring it back to my mum, which I don't like to do, but we had a little Barney that's Australian for Fight on the phone the other night. She'd spoken to a psychiatrist friend of hers who, I don't know how frustrated, man, and I'm paraphrasing here, paraphrasing a paraphrase, but he said something to her along the lines of anybody who's experienced a psychotic episode, if they use cannabis, not necessarily in direct linkage to that usage, that's as good as a blood test for saying that they're like positive for mental disorders, right? So that's some of the old school thinking that psychiatrist to, willingly spout here in Australia. And it's just insane. It boggles the mind.
Just for the quick clarity to the audience, the whole what Tory's talking about is like if there was a correlation between mental illness and cannabis use, mental illness would have increased along with the cannabis use, which has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And mental health has not. So they're not linked. And if they are, it's like they're linked like this much. Sorry.
Yeah, they're linked to the percentage of people that have a predisposition to mental illness, like if that's me, right, it could have happened through cannabis use, through alcohol abuse, or just through hanging out and playing too much PlayStation. If that disposition is there in a person, the potential's there. And I don't think cannabis use exacerbates it.
No, look, I think the society we live in now, if you look at it, it's blame culture. It's blame culture. They call it cancel culture, but really people are just blaming others for what they hate in themselves. Oh, he's a sexual deviant. Fucking execute him, kill his complete career. Oh, he's a racist. Oh, execute him, kill, or she's a racist, kill him, execute their whole career because they had like 3 tweets. Like this, did you see this latest thing in the news? This wonderful dude. He started some charity. He just had a sign that said donate. I think it was like donate, give me a 6-pack. And it just took flight, and he ended up getting lots and lots of money. He donates to this child fund. They find fucking 2 billion years ago when he was 16, he wrote like 2 kind of racist but not really tweets, and now everyone hates him. And now they don't. But it's like, oh, who cares? Who cares?
I mean, that's the world we live in. I mean, no one on this panel had that stuff when we were kids, when we were at school. It wasn't a thing. But there's a whole generation of people now that like privacy has a complete different meaning to them than it does to us.
Well, speaking of privacy, though, we as Americans are very willing to give up privacy for conveniency. And that has been proven time and time again. That is why Google, and that's why Facebook, and that's why all those things and all the social media and YouTube's surviving. Look at me, I'm putting my life out on YouTube. I'm like, okay with it, right? Like, think about it. Think about what we're doing today. But it's all with the intent. I'm only doing this just to hopefully semi-normalize this with my age and my type and speak out, because I was misguided and misdirected, and I was so wrong to judge people that smoked cannabis. I was so wrong to judge that. And like, I just want people to be aware. Like, I just was so wrong. Like, people didn't talk about it around me. Like, I was so misguided from the DARE children, right? It was awful.
Yeah. Look, and ultimately one of the biggest things that the cannabis world faces is the United Nations. We're still all beholden and to legislation that we signed in the 60s that Anslinger wrote in like 100 years ago now. But until the UN changes its stance, it's going to be harder to continue that conversation in some parts of the world, and to some certain generations and mindsets as well. You can't even say generation now, can you? Because you've got High there loading up her dab rig, right? And then, my mum's coming around later to pick up my son for the afternoon, and she would have no idea what you're doing there. So it's not a generational thing. It's creeping across all generations, clearly. It's just about more things like this. That's why I started the podcast. It was just to put more information out there, and if it hits with someone, it hits with someone, and hopefully it does.
Hey, tell us about the podcast. We haven't spoke about it. We've just got into like fucking hardcore topics.
I know exactly. The whole reason we had him on here was because we wanted to talk to him about his podcast and what he actually does. So please, and I just shared his Instagram link in the chat, guys. So go check his Instagram link, and there you go. Go ahead, Herbalized.
Yeah, so I guess after having spent a bit of time working in Cali, working on some farms, doing my trimmigrancy, and coming back to Australia, I went to a 420 picnic here in a park, and I saw there was a real scene. Like there was clouds of smoke in this park in the middle of the city in Melbourne, like inner city. So I saw there was a scene, and I kind of felt that there would be a space for a podcast, you know, and I was an avid Joe Rogan listener and stuff like that. So that was definitely a part of it. And I got I mean, the idea initially was to try and create as much information around what was happening here in Australia, but it grew from that, or metamorphosed, I guess, pretty quickly, and changed to just being me talking about stuff I enjoy and trying to find as many interesting conversations and interesting people to chat with. And I mean, if you like weed, reggae, or you're into jiu-jitsu at all, then there's something in the podcast for you, because that's pretty much all I do. So, I mean, in terms of guests, I've had a really good variety of guests, from like professional athletes, politicians, you know, local cannabis growers, people who produce nutrients and things like that here in Australia. And from all over the world, you know. It took a bit of a break. I got a 2-year-old son. So when my son was born, I had a little bit of time off, but we've recently come back and working in the shop here in the city. So I manage a head shop, basically a head shop where I bought my first bong like 20 something years ago when I was 16 years old, right? So it's been around for a long, long time. And that's just opened up a few new avenues through suppliers overseas and things like that. So we've had the ability to be able to bring in some people like the guys from Ghost Vaporizer. I've got the THC check people on the line, which is a rad product that's just hit the market. So you can actually test your edibles, your oils, and your flower at home.
What? What was that?
Yeah.
What's it called again?
Let me get officially.
That sounds really cool. I'm very interested. So, hey guys,
It
he has
looks
a
like a really
podcast.
amazing
That's what
product.
he's talking about, just so you all know in chat. Yeah. They're liking your Mammoth P hat, and we're laughing because we have some people laughing about what we had go on in our show last night. Go check it out, guys. We had some fun in our show last night talking with another Aussie guy.
So yeah, I'll check out that T-check thing. I'm just bringing it up. It
that's fine.
looks like a really phenomenal product that's coming to the market. So yeah, like I said, lots of cool stuff in the lines, lots of cool episodes to go back and listen to. There's definitely an Aussie twist to it all, but you know, no matter where you are in the world, I've got people from all over listening. Man, I've got people from like Kenya listening. I got people from, I can't even pronounce them. Oi!
Oh, look at that.
Please.
Colin, where the hell's my hat, Colin? Because I know you're watching my show, Colin.
Send them out.
Damn you, Colin.
Yeah.
You know what? I have the new Mammoth product, though.
Oh,
No,
the pest control one?
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, how's that? I don't think it's coming out.
I haven't even used it yet. Isn't that a shame on me, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's coming out here, but Mammoth P, damn, folks.
Right over there.
If you don't know, then you got to know, because if you ain't using it, you're missing out. That's liquid gold right there. Liquid gold.
Next year, I'm going to add it in my grow. I'm holding off this year. I did not want to add anything new in my grow. This is just how I feel. Like this year, I wanted just to get the feel of what I got solid in my dirt and my soil. And I've got the no-till thing going on.
Nice.
I've got some cover crop with clover going on. I've got some natural yarrow, some chamomile that's popping up every now and then. So I've just got some natural no-till going on, except for a few beds that my chickens decided to till. So I have a few tilled beds for my chickens, but maybe they added some more poo, right? So hey, I added some nitrogen there.
I think Boom Boom has a question for
What's Boom Boom
Herbalized.
got? What we got?
He says, can we ask Herbalized my question, please?
Where in E?
No, Herbalized.
Oh no, had we missed
no,
it?
that's
Sorry,
you.
Remember?
Yeah, that's me.
Shit.
Boom Boom, what did you want to ask? We
Yeah,
must
ask
have
again.
missed-
Boom, boom.
Yeah, ask away. Hi asked if you slept with koala bears instead of teddy bears.
The drop bears you got to look out for. If
The
you,
what
if you ever
bears?
come, the drop bears, you got to be real
What's
careful.
that?
What's
They're
that?
like a cousin of the koala bear. That you only find them deep in the bush, and they call them drop bears because they will just drop from the top of a tree right onto your face. And yeah. Australia's got some nasty creatures.
Are
Yeah.
you fucking with me right now? You're fucking with me right now. No,
No, no,
way.
Come
No,
on,
no.
Dan, why are you doing
Hey,
like that, dude?
listen.
Because he's laughing.
Yeah,
Dan's
straight-
laughing. I think you're fucking with me right now.
No.
Dan, come on, that was the straightest drop bear face you ever saw, right?
Oh, yeah. Dan, you
No, it
suck.
was pretty good. It was pretty
Yeah.
good.
Drop bears.
Dan's
pretty
gave
good.
it
No,
away. He was
I
laughing.
used to work
He
at
was
this
so
zoo.
fucking with us. Oh, my
Yeah, no,
God.
I'm totally fucking with you. It's like an
Woo,
Australian
I caught
urban
it.
legend that we talk about.
Oh,
Totally
okay.
fucking with you. But I used
I
to work
almost
at the
fell
zoo.
for it, dude.
But you guys really do have some wild and crazy animals and creatures there.
We
because-
do, yeah.
Because I was a big fan of the Bondi Vet, and I
Uh-huh.
watched that show all the time. And he would go into these crazy areas with these wild, freaking weird, I don't know what.
Oh yeah,
gotta
we've got a lot of freaky stuff here. I actually worked at the city zoo here for like nearly 10 years. I used to love
Are you serious? You work at the zoo? You used to work at the zoo? I would love to work at a zoo.
Yeah, zoo's great. Zoo's a great place to work. Mate, look,
Oh.
obviously people have mixed emotions about zoos, but the reality is just about
Man,
everybody
they
who
take
works
care
in
of their
a zoo-
animals.
100%. Everybody who works in a zoo kind of wishes zoos didn't exist, but got to make the most of it and give the animals the best care and that you can.
You know, I just kind of disagree with a lot of that because zoos exposed me to a lot of animals that I wouldn't have been able to see.
100%.
And I was a child that needed to experience and needed to get out and see animals. And I connected with animals. Animals were really important in my life, and they still are. I have a dog, I have chickens, I have geese. Those are all things that regenerative, right? We're all talking about wanting regenerative and connect with the earth and get back to that, and animals, I think, are such an important thing of that. And I think the zoos take amazing care of them. And if I go to Australia, I want to hook up and go to that zoo then.
I got you. Yeah. No, I mean, look, good zoos nowadays, and most zoos nowadays are good zoos. They have a good emphasis on conservation, and that's what's important. And like you say, we're living in Washington DC, where you're going to get a chance to go hang out with some elephants or some exotic large cat or whatever it is. So yeah, it's important. I think as long as it's done right. There are good zoos and there are bad zoos out there, but I think for the most part, they're good zoos.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's good and bad. That's, like everything. There's a balance with everything. Just like growers. There's good growers. There's bad growers. We all know that.
Yeah.
There's good weed.
Hey,
There's bad
everybody.
weed.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We did miss 420. And thanks, everyone, for being out there and participating tonight in chat. The chat is going crazy.
Yeah.
You guys have been welcoming everybody, saying hi to one another. If there's some stuff that we need to know, guys, bring it to our attention. If there's some other audience members that we need to get on here, more people that we need to get on here.
Okay. So Boom Boom wants to know how many shrimp fit on a Barbie.
Boom, boom.
I've got it. I think I know the answer.
You do?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I need to talk to my Australian compadre in private.
I think it would depend on how big the shrimp is and how big your Barbie.
What's a shrimp?
Tory, do you know?
Shrimp?
Do you know the answer?
I think it depends on like the square inch ratio of shrimp to grill proportions.
Shrimp to grill, exactly.
Yeah, it definitely relates to that.
I know the answer of that equation.
Oh, okay. Lay us in.
I think it's
Shrimp
about
equals
76 metric fuck tons. Pretty sure.
That's a whole lot of shrimp.
That's what I remember from back in.
From your arithmetic days.
Yeah, boom, boom. I got a pretty small grill, dude. So I don't know. I got pretty big shrimp too. So 4.
We don't call them shrimp, man. You guys get the shrimp because they're
Yeah, we get the
shrimps.
prawns, Joe.
We get the
Oh, you
full
guys
size
get
bitches.
prawns.
Yeah.
They're mammoth
We
size.
call those scampies here, I think.
Yeah, same sort of
'Cause
deal.
they-
Although scampi are normally freshwater.
Because they scampi away to Australia. That's where they. Man, we got. There's a dude from South Africa who's tuned in.
Yes, I saw that.
Gene Van. God knows what his name is. He's
Gene
trillion.
Van Windgarden Lindhout.
No, it's not a guy.
It's a she.
representing
She's
a
a
female. I was
female
just
grower.
shout her out. I was just finding her name. I'm like,
Well,
yeah,
cooler.
you go, girl.
Even cooler.
South
Hey,
Africa
if you want on here, I'd
legal as
love
well,
to have
you
you on
know?
here. What's that?
South Africa now have a legit cannabis scene, and they've done it quite differently to how the rest of the world have done it. And they did it through the courts. Yeah, they did it all through the courts rather than like through medical and those and through
Is that
politics.
right? Wow.
Yeah, so
I have no idea. Tell me about it.
well,
Gene,
I don't
we
know
got to
great
get
deal
we got to
about
get
that.
Gene to reach out to us somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we're going to
On
get Gene on.
Hangouts.
She can probably drop way more knowledge than I can. But I mean, what I know is that I think you've got a kind of like adult use acceptance, and rather than going through changing laws and things like that, there was some sort of ruling within a court. A bunch of activists kept going to court with specific charges or whatever you do, to the point where it got changed. And there's a few dispensaries open in Johannesburg, and yeah, it's really starting to happen.
Awesome.
Interesting.
There are
That's
places-
crazy.
Canada gets huge play because obviously they're a big Western country, and it was massive for them to do what they did last year. But you know, places like Jamaica, for instance, you know, they've been legal for a couple of years now. You know, to the point where, and it's not my favorite thing, but you know, as a tourist to Jamaica, you can jump off a cruise boat in Ocho Rios.
Yes,
you can,
I was.
You can prepay your ounce. You go over to a candy machine. You know, you press your button in, your ounce drops out. You go to a beach, you smoke a spliff, and I guess that's cool for some people, but you kind of miss a bit of the authentic Jamaican experience of like getting ripped off. You should get ripped off by a local and put a little bit of extra money in their pocket.
Okay.
And,
Hey, I just wanted to point out there's some rosin.
Jamaican.
Well, when I was in Jamaica, I was looking for some weed, and I stupidly didn't get off the bus on the drive from the airport to the hotel. They were actually stopping so you could get off and buy weed from local guys on the side of the road.
Yep.
I didn't do it because I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly, I guess. Anyhow, we get to the hotel, and a couple of days in, I could really use some weed. So I start asking around, and I speak to this guy who I assume is the go-to guy, and he thinks I'm a narc. He's going, why you come to me? I said, well, you've got a cannabis flower hanging around your neck. So finally, he tries to sell me 2 joints for $50.
Ouch.
Yeah. I said, are you nuts? I said, you think I fell off the cabbage truck yesterday? Anyway.
Hey, unfortunately, they get people like that. I know.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
That's kind of important. I mean, look, they're poor people, you know, and it's look, you got a story to tell forever now as well.
Yeah.
Guys. You got a story out of it. Well, he didn't get $50, but he got $50 out of the next guy, you know. So
I'm sure he did. Oh yeah.
Exactly.
I used to spend a fair bit of time in Jamaica, and mostly like in the city, so not so much in the touristy areas, but every now and then it's nice to go down to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being in would have been Ochi probably, or Montego Bay, and running out of herb and talking to a local and being like, hey man, I need you to get me $100 bag, please. And his eyes lit up. He's like, boy, I'm gonna make some money right now. So he runs off and comes back, you know, with what I would expect to pay for $100 Jamaican dollars, right? which is about an eighth of weed, and it's about $1 Aussie, so it's about 75 cents US. And he comes back, and I give him $100 Jamaican, and he looks at me, kisses his teeth. Why you give me 100 Jamaican dollars? That 100 US bag, man. I'm gonna cuss him out in good patois because I can speak it and tell him what's up, but I got a good story out of that one too. I ended up giving him a few extra $100 bills because I liked his hustle. But yeah, man, that's Jamaica for you. Everyone's looking to make a hustle. Everyone's looking to get on.
And it is their lifestyle, and it is the way they make a living. It is quite different. You guys can go back. I have filmed videos actually. Jamaica's actually kind of where I actually decided to do a YouTube channel.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, honestly, because and honestly, it's kind of Bubble Man inspired. I mean, I hate to be all fangirl, but Bubble Man, it's not that he's this famous person and because all of a sudden he has all these subscribers. It's actually because in a time of my life that I came to YouTube as a medical patient surviving cancer, wanting to get off these medicines, knowing that I shouldn't be on all these pharmaceuticals. And it was through him that I was inspired to create my own medicine and my own grow and have solventless products. And in fact, I wanted to show everybody this awesome rosin right here that I have that's buttering up. It's got this amazing two-tone color going on here. And that's just from sitting here, natural product, whole flower, whole plant extract, something I grew last year. These are buckets here that I'm getting ready to press, getting ready to consolidate all my material this year because I'm getting ready to harvest this next year. And, and that's the part that brings me back to YouTube and how I met everybody and why we're here is before the medical benefits and this plant bringing us all together and us sharing in this, it's so important that we have the opportunity behind these scenes, behind YouTube. We can reach out and hang out with this and talk to these people in other countries and really, connect in ways that we were never able to do that before. And I think it's really important that we do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And thanks heaps for having me out. I really appreciate getting to come on and have a chat with you guys and meeting new people, man. I mean, that's what technology kind of allows us to do right now. I haven't even met Dan in the flesh, but we were able to create this relationship and make this happen. So we need more of these avenues.
I have a question. It's a good question. It's from the American one. He wants to know who is the coolest person or the most interesting person that you interviewed in your podcast so far.
That's a good question. I reckon it's probably an episode I'm not the most proud of because of all the episodes, it's the one that I was really in awe of the guest. And that was with Daniele Bolelli. If you're not aware of Daniele, he runs a couple of really successful podcasts. One of them is History on Fire, and the other one is The Drunken Taoist. He's been a regular guest on the Rogan podcast a few times as well. He's an Italian fella who lives in LA, and yeah, he's a philosopher. He's a martial artist. And he smokes cannabis. So he ticked all my boxes in terms of what the podcast is after. But he's somebody who, I've been really fortunate. Prior to my podcasting life, I used to do this little reggae TV show and, spend a lot of time in Jamaica hanging out with, all the artists that I admired and very rarely got fanboyed or tongue-tied or starstruck. Queen Ifrica, because she's just beautiful and her eyes, and when she sings, I just wow. And Daniele Bolelli, of all the people I've interviewed in my life, they're the two that I've really been kind of nervous and fanboyed out. And to his credit, whilst I wasn't super proud of my performance, he's an absolute professional, and he managed to steer the podcast really well and make it into something that is worth a listen. So if you've not listened to the Herbalized podcast, that could be a good place to get started.
Nice. I dig his fucking audiobooks, man. I think
Yeah,
I think
he's an amazing author.
Yeah, my brother got me onto him because I saw a couple of interviews with him on Rogan, and yeah, he just has an awesome way of the way that he tells history feels like you're reading a fucking awesome action thriller book. It doesn't feel like you're just learning. You know, he takes you through. He has a narrative rather than just straight facts of like, you know, this shit happened in 13 foot. No, he will give you this beautiful, scary, sometimes humanistic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
Very cool. I don't even know who that guy is, so I'll definitely have to listen to your podcast because I'm meeting you for the first time, guys. By the way, we're meeting for the first time. I didn't even know who Herbalized was, and this is like I'm saying, this is how I want to bring the cannabis community together. I want to bring anybody and everybody that wants to come on here and wants to get their story out and wants to be heard.
Yes. Now, Herbalized, are you on Cannabis as well?
What's that? Huh?
Are you on Cannabis as well?
No, Cannabis. I'm not even aware of Cannabis. What's the buzz?
You have to look up.
Hang on, that just sounded like such a fucking terrible, corny, like made up segue. Like we had some bullshit plan. I just had to pause you.
It is. What's the buzz?
Oh my god!
JR should have been here.
Holy fuck!
JR Token, our friend, should have been here. He represents our Cannabis family. We have an amazing family in the Cannabis. It's a social media platform, free for medical, for weed, cannabis, whatever the hell you want to call it.
Yeah, you will never get kicked off because you're talking weed. It is all weed all the time.
I'll get on there. I'll be on there by weekend's end.
There you go.
And our friend,
like Instagram,
our friend JR Token is the man. He is hooked us up with some awesome guests we have coming up. He is a sweetheart. He's one of the founders of this. So it's for biomedical patient, you guys. I mean, there you go.
And he's also part of the Dude
Grows,
which we have a shit ton of members in chat and in the audience at the moment from the Dude Grow crew. Again,
that's awesome.
And they pump information out daily, man. And they were turned off on YouTube for a whole week. The Dude Grow Show. They couldn't post for a whole freaking week. They got a strike for some bullshit, and they couldn't post. And this is what's going on. And we need to band together. We need to keep going like this. We need to continue to build Cannabis, I think, one person at a time.
Yeah, that's where platforms like Cannabis are really important. You know, censoring content is just, I mean, boo, YouTube, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, you could post your links to your podcast also on Cannabis as well as the second platform.
Yeah, right.
Which is like basically it's Instagram before. It's Instagram but for weed, you know. It's simple as that. Well, yeah, but a lot of the people will get kicked off, right? This is the thing. It's like what it is it's a secondary platform. Instead of making two channels, you just have two platforms. I don't know, but yeah.
Oh, look, I get the importance of things like that, man, and whether it's this one or one will eventually hit off and become as massive as Instagram or Facebook or something like that, you know. Hopefully it's Cannabis.
Oh yeah, because I'm sure there's a whole lot more weed consumers out there than I just, you know, we just opened a store here in my little town, and I went by the other day and there was quite a lot of people in there, and you don't really, you know, it's so new, and people were all kind of poo-pooing the whole idea, but
there were people spending money too. And I don't know what the Canadian retail environment's like, but if it's like the Australian one, you know, it's constantly like brick and mortar is on the decline, you know, internet is king, but the bargain is king. But, you know, brick and mortar cannabis stores, come on, you know, that appeals to the inner kid of all of us. Everyone's going to go in there and have a look.
It's a candy store, but here it's all our stores are government run. You cannot own a store yourself. It's all like our. So the prices are ridiculous. The lineup is around the door because they're only letting like 5 people in at a time. Look at her showing off her buds. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Look at those donkey tails.
Yeah, so
yeah, that's interesting. I went to a talk, it'd be a couple of years ago now, and it was put on by the Canadian Chamber of Commerce here in Melbourne.
Oh.
And there were a bunch of Canadians over here, and there were a bunch of kind of like bigwigs from the medicinal cannabis industry here in Australia.
Hi, Big Ed.
And essentially, it was just prior to you guys going rec. It was probably like a year before that. Mm-hmm. And the Canadian guys were talking about how they weren't going to have enough cannabis to meet the demand when they switched to rec.
Yeah.
And Australian laws allow for exportation, and your laws allow for it. So Australia and cannabis are basically allowed to supply each other with cannabis on a federal side of things, right? It's legal. And because there's a bunch of cannabis companies here in Australia producing product, but the product's not yet readily available for Australian users.
Right.
They were talking about excess Australian cannabis going over to Canada, right? Then the problems that ensue from that is because, and chatting to a couple of Canadians after, you guys do things quite differently to how we do here in Australia or in the States even. Like even with your liquor licensing, the state or the government buys all the alcohol first and then disperses it.
Yes.
And that's how the cannabis procurement would have happened as well. So the Canadian government would have bought the cannabis from the Australian government, and then it would have been disseminated out. And the big issue there is that Australian cannabis can only end up in the hands of legit medicinal users.
Oh.
If Australian cannabis ends up in a rec shop, then we're basically Canada's weed plug. So, I mean, there's got to be some checks and balances somewhere that's like, oh, well, this is the stuff that's from Australia. It can only go to X shop. But, bureaucrats and politicians and government officials and workers are kind of the same the world over. In my experience, they tend to be a bit lazy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, that was always really interesting. And it's been a hard answer to get from anybody, what checks and balances were put in place to make sure that you're not smoking Aussie cannabis on a rec card versus a medicinal one.
Yeah, well, all the packaging, because when you buy it here, it comes in, extremely large packaging, and it's all from grows here in Canada. All the ones that I've seen so far. It doesn't say anything else. However, it's expensive. Yeah. And they had to, like you said, we had a shortage. They went legal last October, and the stores opened. The few stores that they opened like, I think, 3 stores in the Quebec area.
Yep.
They were so overrun that they ran out of product. Like within the first 2 days, I think they ran out of product. So people are at the doors. They've been waiting in line for hours, and now they're told, "Sorry, we don't have anything left." So they decided to close the stores on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So they're only open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah. Wow.
So if you run out of weed on a Monday, you're fucked. That's it.
Right.
You're out of luck.
Yeah. And so if you do run out of weed on a Monday, does that mean, and you really need some, is that where you hit up a friend, or there's black market opportunities still available?
There are still black market opportunities available.
But
I don't think the black market's ever going to go away.
But back to the reason we have 61-year-old women walking into these dispensaries, all the way back to the beginning, the point I brought up before, is they don't know the person on the corner.
No.
They don't normally have a hookup.
No.
So they're going in and they're asking these bud tenders, what do they need? And these bud tenders are clueless. They don't know what to tell these people what they need.
Yeah.
It's I can't tell you what I've been through in the last 3 years that I have been trying to buy medical weed. Thank gosh I was able to grow finally last year, my first grow. I finally was able to go all year and be on my own personal product. And I only bought because I wanted to. I didn't have to. And that felt so good. And it was so nice to be able to have the right to do that. And I really hope they never take that right away from me. And I want everybody that has that right to go out and celebrate it and try it. At least try grow one plant. I challenge you,
Yeah.
one plant.
Well, let's hope that right just eventually extends to every member of the human race, right?
100. Yep.
But one thing you mentioned before, Hai, and I think it's something that's an important thing to bring up, because the cannabis industry is massive. It's huge. You talk about big packaging, and that's something that we're all as a community responsible for, and it's the element of like throwaway trash, these electronic carts, disposable pens. It's going to be the beginnings of an impact, right? Throwing away a roach, is different to throwing away a cart when you finished it, or
in this rather large box was 3.5 grams.
Yeah, it's insane.
It still smells good. But yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to throw it out because I want to, try to be responsible. So I'm keeping it to reuse for stuff.
For sure, but how can you do that forever until you become a crazy hoarder lady?
Well, that's why that's why I don't bother.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think that the industry has a responsibility to kind of look at environmentally friendly packaging.
Yes.
And things like, carts have obviously gotten a lot of press lately with some people having passed away overseas in the States.
Yes,
But
let's touch on that, because that's like current event right now and what that's happening, and new people come to this channel all the time, and that's happening right now. You need to be aware of every cart that's out there. Be aware of what you're taking in your body, where you're getting it, because there was some bad stuff went on. Bad juju is going to happen. Like there was vitamin E apparently in this stuff. We don't know all the logistics. I can't familiarize you with all of them, but just be knowledgeable. Check it out.
Yeah, that's important to point out, is that we don't know everything that happened, right? And there are a whole bunch of potential things that contribute to what happened. We don't know. What we know is that they happen in states where there's no medical possibilities. So, for all we know, the people that have passed away were patients with compromised immune systems as well. So, because you can guarantee there was more than 6 dodgy carts out in the world. So some people have used them without dire consequences. They might
of course there has not been only 6. I'm sorry. And they were in different locations that we know, right?
And we had them here in Canada as well, and it's only it only seems to be certain people with high risk and
they all seem to be black market carts as well, and that's what you guys have the benefit of, being able to go to a space where everything's lab tested, it's going to be clean. And again, that's the problems you have with a black market. It is the complete opposite of that. You just don't know what you're getting. Even when it comes to cannabis now, you can get a dodgy product when it comes to concentrates and thinners and additives.
So the irony is, in order, they try to legalize it and regulate it, but if they just treated it like a fucking plant, like an orange tree or a tomato plant, everyone would just be a lot safer, maybe. I don't know. If you grew it yourself, like I just watched Tara grow her own pot, squish her own weed, and she's got this awesome concentrate, and it seems real clean, pure, and very healthy.
It seems like it all makes sense, right?
And it saved me so It saved me so much money. Oh my gosh. Because I was paying at the very beginning when rosin wasn't even out yet. It was literally $90 a gram. And then
Wow.
of course, that's because my state has 34% tax on top of that. We have a sin tax, right? It's a sin tax that they put on alcohol and everything else. Well, I'm a sinner apparently because I partake of medicine that helps me. I don't know. I don't get that tax, but somewhere I have to pay this tax now because it's recreational bullshit.
Yeah.
Ugh, frustrating. But yeah,
So,
I have saved a lot of money.
how much did you say you pay in a dispensary for like an eighth?
Oh, that's not what I wanted.
I don't know what our flour is. I have never actually bought flour.
Oh yeah, that's your concentrate girl. All right, so
Yeah.
sorry.
So right now, okay.
Of like shatter or a gram of rosin.
For rosin right now, the best you can find is around $45, I would say, with taxes and everything for an okay kind. But that's not like, I mean, that's not like bubble. I mean, the bubbles are like 90, 100. I mean, they're pushing quite a bit over there because it's a niche market and they're very limited and people know that they can get away with those prices. And what's really crappy, it's not the farmer that's making the money or the person that's processing it. It's the retailers that are making all this money. This is what's okay. This is another thing. Small businesses, and I'm not talking small businesses, I'm actually talking micro businesses, farmers, niche farmers need to get together just like they're doing down in Humboldt, and they need to start carrying a niche brand, and they need to start marketing and getting themselves together about branding themselves and getting these micro businesses to start speaking out that they should be able to sell to the end consumer or to the medical patient direct. We should not have to go to somebody that doesn't know shit and have to pay 3 times the markup for our product that we need to survive on.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, there's an argument for just being happy to be able to have access to it. And if those taxes go to the appropriate places, but at the same time, you know, you're devaluating something and from the small time guys to the big time guys even, you know. I've got a buddy who is based in Washington, actually. He has some pretty large facilities out there. And he was out here recently for the hemp expo that we have a couple of times a year. And he was telling me that wholesale, they're selling shatter for like $12 to $16 a gram, right? And my mind blew at that.
No, you're right.
In Australia, that's insane.
No, literally, yeah, you're right. Because literally, I bought some something. It was not very good, and it was like my first time buying it. It was $15 a gram, and that's why I bought it. It was the sale of the day that they got in 15. I'm sorry if you're paying $15 a gram, it can't be that healthy for you. I don't know.
Well, this is wholesale, so then your retailer comes in and puts a markup on it. But he was saying his competitor had just dropped his wholesale prices to something like, you know, $8 or something like that. And he was going to have to match that as well. So, you know, the market is actually like running down to the point where you have like people exporting cannabis internationally again from America to Australia, to Europe, and getting top dollar for their product, which is a real shame because, you know, I know of people in Australia who will pay like 200 Australian dollars, 220 Australian dollars for an eighth of Cali weed. And, you know, there's a lot of risk that goes through bringing it from there to here. But, you know, just grow fireweed here and charge decent prices, because that just brings all sorts of unwanted attention to this.
I have a question. I have a really good question. All right. What do you think? Holy tooty balls. What do you think about the black market seed trade in Australia and its dangers on the natural environment, dude?
Well, you kind of brought that up before when we were chatting, man, at the very start. And I think that's a really that's something that I'd never even given consideration to before you said those words today. And it's, I mean, look, for people watching from around the world, Australia, obviously, gigantic island, super far away from the rest of y'all. And as such, we have really tight border control. We don't have a lot of foreign disease, like in terms of, problems for livestock, problems for agricultural stock and things like that are pretty rampant and are just a part of life as a farmer for most parts of the world. We just don't have those issues here. And it's through really rigorous border control of things like plants and woods and stuff like that coming into the country. And like Dan says, there's this whole underground black market cannabis seed bank going on, where genetics are sent from all over the world, and they're obviously not subjected to the rigorous screening that other plants would be. So look, there are even clones and cuttings coming in from other parts of the world. You can ship a cutting for 10 days in the post nowadays. So it's a really interesting question, and I'd hate to think that cannabis is responsible for any problems. But just because I'd hate to think that, and I don't like the question because maybe it has a bad answer, it's a really important one to ask. And that's probably a really good thing to talk to like Scotty about. He might be up to date on shit like that or have a bit more info.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is I don't know. We're probably never going to know for sure because it's too late.
Yep.
It was all
Yeah,
done
you're right.
in the dark. So
yeah, exactly.
I think the question is more existential. It's like just double check what you're doing, even though there's no set rules and you're in a black market. You need to still check yourself because just being
or
greedy.
If you're in Australia and you're watching this, there's lots of amazing local genetics. You don't have to go offshore. You just have to develop the relationships, and they're all there online to be found and to be had.
My yeah, look, I know.
Get down with your bad self high.
I love it. I love it how we're all having fun tonight, you guys. It's awesome. Hey, that's another thing I was going to recommend everybody. Since they're banning everybody for playing music in the background, y'all turn on your headphones and listen to some other music. Turn on your own tunes. That way you can listen to your own stuff and we all hang out and sesh anyways, right?
But so what I was getting at with that question of the seeds is that, again, just because there's no rules in the black market doesn't mean that you shouldn't think about being responsible for certain things. Like, for example, I have some friends that are just they're addicted, absolutely addicted to ordering seeds, and they're just ordering them by the
my God. I know guys here in the States, and they like, I'm like, how many seeds do you have? Like, how many can you possibly grow? They're like seed hoarders. I'm like, seriously, those seeds they're probably going to go bad by the time you're ever going to use that many, but they're like addicted to this. Why?
So not only one are they never going to get to use these seeds, so they're just hoarding, and it's just a waste. It's not anything to do in line with nature at all. And two, you don't know what distance these seeds have traveled and what microscopic pathogens or negative things on that fucking seed are traveling to all of these different places. So my argument is, it's just like, don't be fucking greedy. If you've got decent genetics, just fucking run with that. It's enough.
Get 'em out there.
Yeah, enough.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a big question. It's not just a small question of like, does it affect the koalas? It's kind of like you should stop maybe over consuming and just crack the seeds you've got, motherfuckers. Sorry if that's pissed anyone off. Too bad. Hey,
keep trading some awesome clones like we do. We keep passing genetics around, but that also passes other things around. Go ahead. Who has a question?
Tayo had a question for Herbalized. Fucking who is the best breeder that you've met so far? I'm assuming
Tayo had a question.
cannabis breeder. So he wants to know who's the most awesomest breeder that you've met so far in your cannabis experience?
Of actual breeders of genetics.
No, I think
Why
he
not?
said that you've interviewed. Did he say that you interviewed?
Yeah, but let's just go full.
But do both.
Let's
Do both. That he interviewed, and
do it
then like
all.
who would be like your next awesome guest? Like you'd really love to get on there.
Well, I'm gonna have Joe Rogan on one day. I know that's gonna happen because we have too many circles that intersect. So like the jiu-jitsu world, it's large but it's small. So I know that's gonna happen one day. And that's the ultimate goal. So Joe, if you're watching, just hit me up. It's look, who I'd like to have on. I'd really like to get some law enforcement from Australia on. That'd be great. That'd be really interesting because wherever it's been really successful around the world, it's been a result of law enforcement understanding that they're being made to do a bad job, a job that they shouldn't have to do. So yeah, I'd love to get a copper on, somebody from the police force, a higher up. That'd be awesome. In terms of who's
the most knowledgeable breeder, I think was the question. Most knowledgeable.
The most knowledgeable breeder? Oh man, look, I know some cats that are like weed whisperers, you know, but I ain't gonna name no names either because we do live in a black market here. So, you know, that's unfortunately I can't just spout it out. But I know dudes that have got fire that anybody would be proud to call their own, you know, crosses that are just phenomenal, and they're Australian. And yep, that's unfortunately.
So is there any genetics that are out there that guys are wanting to be named and like they're okay with saying, here I am, I'm a breeder, and they're for sale? They're on Instagram, they're on Cannabis.
There
How
are
they
guys
reach
on
out?
Instagram here in Australia. I
Okay.
can say I've cracked any of their seeds, so you know I've smoked some of it, and it's definitely really nice weed. But yeah, I don't want to put anybody on blast, you know.
Oh no, that's okay, and that's exactly why, you know, and I respect that because that's why I say that's why Cannabis is available. People can reach out there and connect and reach out that
Good.
way, and
Yeah.
DM people that way. That's what you do. You don't always say out here.
Yeah, I mean, you got to build the relationship sometimes, and in a black market, that's really important. You can't be inappropriate. And I said before, you know, there are available seed banks here in Australia. They're there, you know, they're not necessarily openly marketed, but if you've got half a brain, you'll find them.
Yeah. You know, that brings up a really good point. You have to build relationships, you guys. Just because you're in the cannabis community doesn't mean everybody's going to share everything with you. Nobody owes you anything. You know, you've got to realize that. Some people go, well, I don't get what this community, cannabis community is all about when, like, you know, not everybody's willing to share. Well, you know, what have you given back? You know, sorry. You need to look within and who you've created good relationships with, and have you burned a lot of bridges, or are you mending fences over here? You know, let's build up the community, and that's what we need to do. And on that note, I think we're going to end the show, guys. Herbalized, is there anything last things you'd like to throw out there, or how everybody can find you?
Thanks for having me. You know, you can find me through all the usual podcast spots. We're there on iTunes, SoundCloud, at the Herbalized Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Reach out, say hi. Look, just like Tara Lee, guys, I'm happy to chat to anyone. All you need is a good internet connection, and we'll figure out the time difference, you know. So hit me up if you've got a story to tell. I'd love to have a chat to anyone. Again, guys, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to meet all of you, actually, because me and Dan, this is the first time we've seen each other face to face. We've chatted online. So yeah, it's a pleasure to meet everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening. And yeah.
And thank you for being here, because it's been wonderful for us to hear all what you have to say. It's great. This is super. Thanks to Dan for introducing us.
Good, yeah.
And thanks to Tara Lee for bringing me. See, we're all connected. 6 degrees of separation.
That's it.
And that's all about the plants.
Yep, we've got to take advantage of being able to do things like this as well. So thanks again, you guys.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
On that note, hey guys, Dan, the audio files, he has an awesome video movie that he put out. If you want to go check it out, it's really pretty cool. I really enjoy it. I thought he did some awesome. He actually mixes that music himself, you guys, on there. It's pretty cool.
You're telling me to do that, man.
Yeah, he is. He is. Even with that one arm, and he's been hurt right now, guys. He's healing up right now. So yeah. He's healing up. He's a crip over there. He doesn't want everybody to know it, but he is. And one-armed bandit, exactly. A highlight for today. She, as a cancer survivor, she talks about on her YouTube channel, talks about going through with the breast cancer. If you know anybody that needs any information or needs someone that reach out to that is going through cancer, because it is freaking scary. Unfortunately, we know. You know, there's one in 2, 1 in 3 women now, I don't know, these days that people are gonna that are gonna have cancer. So please reach out to someone that does have cancer and share this with them if you can. And we have a little one. Do you want to introduce the little one in the picture here? Look at that.
Solzine. He's just come to say goodbye.
Hi, Sol.
Say bye, Sol.
Good night, Sol.
Everybody.
Good night. Thanks for joining us tonight. It was so awesome, and welcome around the world.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
awesome.
It's morning. It's morning over there.
Yeah.
We're just cracking on.
They're
with
just
the day.
starting their day.
All right. Okay. Peace, love, happy, healthiness. I love y'all out there. Thanks for joining us. Everybody in chat. We'll see you on the next live, hopefully next Wednesday at 4:00 Pacific Standard Time. Bye, y'all.
Bless.